Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, and listeners, here we have, and I mean it now, this is a very, very special podcast. It's one that I've always wanted to have. It's one that I've spoken with the gentleman about on several occasions. But now that he's a retired ex-aviation professional, he's agreed to come on. And it's with great pleasure that I welcome Rupert Batstone. Rupert.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well, my friend, and you look suitably content up there in the Highlands. And
it's relaxing to say the least, and no more work is nice. It feels like every day's a Saturday. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Apart from the collection of midges that you've got up there at the moment.
Midges, and horseflies. Horrible.
But it's like we said. You can't have everything, and in God's canvas, if he gives you such beautiful scenery, you're going to get something to bite you.
Exactly. There's got to be a downside to all this beauty. That's quite correct.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for coming on. I know we've joked in the past about why you would or wouldn't come on. And you've always been, I've got to say this now, genuinely, you've always been very outspoken. You're a character in the industry. And I've grown to like you and love you. I've had some great times with you, Rupert, and it's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you, reflecting back on your career. So with that, obviously, you've just recently retired from Swissport, and I think we should just, give a little bit of a, nod of the cap and a salute to Swissport. I know you've had a great time there.
I have. I've been there 10.5 years, which is my longest job in my whole career. So can't be all bad. A great company to work for. They let you get on with things. Good set of people who knew their stuff. Good times, bad times, like anywhere. But everyone it was more of it was a big company, but it was like a great, big, huge team that, you might bicker once in a while, but you always got on with it and keen to we had our frustrations, but keen to succeed. It was a good company to work for. Great bosses, great colleagues, great people around the world, knew their stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit of sadness in not having to join that anymore, but there's more happiness than sadness.
Okay, right. And just on that, because obviously, it's nice to recognize the last company you were with, but this is more about your career and a little bit of fun and memories and people and frustrations, etc. So I think we wish Warwick Brady in his new role and Swissport the very best. And now, my friend, how did you get into this career in the first place?
Oh God. I left school and I was living at home, and my dad said, you get 3 months off, then you've got to get off your butt and go and get a job. So I went to the local job centre, and there was a job for an aircraft driver loader for Cardiff Airport, where I lived, and that was catering company. It was ACS, part of Trust House 40. That's going back a bit, isn't it? So I got that job. They kindly gave me the job, and I was doing that for 3 months, and then British Airways stopped doing their domestic routes and grounded all their Viscounts, turboprops as well. I am so old. And they were all parked up at Cardiff because that was a Viscount base, and Dan Air took on all these routes, so they needed staff. So as I was at the airport, I found out Dan Air was recruiting, and I joined Dan Air. And I stayed there for 10 years, moved around, stayed in Cardiff, moved up to Aberdeen. That was a great one. An internal job advert said cargo officer Aberdeen. And coming from South Wales, I pointed that to my colleagues and said, you'll never get any stupid idiot to go all that far north in Scotland. And 2 months later, I was there. And then I went to head office. I love Dan Air. Dan Air was a great airline. I detest anyone calling it Dan Air because they had some really good professionals there. It wasn't, the best airline in the world, but these guys really knew what they were doing.
That's good. Lovely. So like so many of us, probably 99.99999%, we fell into this industry.
Yeah, I did, definitely.
Either because somebody telling us, something we read, somebody who we knew, or just living close to an airport.
I think the interesting thing is we had a trainer come up from head office Gatwick, and you never saw someone from Gatwick. You're in the West Country or Wales. They never went that far up the M4. And he came and he took us out. Part of the training, we had 2 727s doing charter flights on a Thursday. So he walked us out onto the pan and said, breathe in. And we all went like that. And he said, that's Jet A1. You either love the smell and you'll never leave the industry. You can't stand the smell and you'll be gone within a month. And out of our training course of 9, literally most of us are still at it in some form or other. And the others that didn't like it were gone in a month. It was amazing. He was so prophetically right. So
but
I must like the smell of aviation gas.
Yeah. But it is incredible, Rupert. Like, depending what your backgrounds were, you know, the first time you go out the back of a shed and you're actually on the tarmac and you see the aircraft, or at night, you know, you see the freighters being loaded, unloaded, or you go to an unusual place and you get off and you think, my God, you know, what an incredible industry this really is, to broaden people's horizons and give them opportunities that they probably wouldn't have had if they'd have chosen a different industry.
Well, I think it's special. I mean, it's not the most highly paid in the world, but you learn a lot. I mean, I think Dan Air gave me an all-round grounding, yeah? So it was small enough that you could understand and learn a bit about everything, yeah? Including flight ops, cargo, passenger check-in. I started on passenger check-in at Cardiff Airport, so that was a good grounding. But still, you know, when I used to stand at the front of the warehouse waiting for the Polar Air cargo to come in at Heathrow, and this ginormous 747 was coming straight at you on taxiway, it made the hairs on the back of your neck go up. It really did. And you know, it was fun. It was great. I like to think those days were fun. As you go up the management chain, of course, it gets more responsibility and everything like that. But the early days were fun. We used to have jousting matches on forklift trucks in Aberdeen. It was a nightmare. I mean, the health and safety men have a heart attack nowadays. But yeah, looking back, I see it as someone paying for me to see the world.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. Paying and also continuing with your education.
Oh yeah, I mean, half the countries in the world I wouldn't have gone to. Some of the cultures that I've met. I mean, when we were in Abu Dhabi, I mean, all the Indians and Pakistani guys and Filipinos. You're all in the same office with these guys. You're learning how they think and work and their culture. It was brilliant. I would just, you sop up learning all the time, don't you? It just keeps going. And the world is your training ground. It's not an office in Staines or anything. It's the world.
It's incredible. And like I say, like you said there, Rupert, you know, going back to those Etihad days, I mean, they were fun. They were fun. They were different. And some of those lads were absolute treasures. They were great lads.
I remember the early days of Etihad. I was there when it started. I think it was 8 months old when I joined Etihad. And some of the stuff we got involved in, because it was brand new. I mean, obviously the senior management had all come over from Gulf Air. This was pre-James Hogan. And they sort of, what do we do now sort of thing. And then I remember with ground ops guy, engineering guy, they said, we've got 26 A330s on order. We need some in-hold PDUs and stuff. So you lot are the team to go and work out. You're a cargo bloke. You need it for putting boxes on. You're an engineer, so you know what fits. You're in ground handling, so you know what bag things you're. So go and choose. I had no bloody clue what this stuff was, but you learnt on your feet. And each aircraft, we made a decision as a group, and each aircraft we spent $250,000 on. It was amazing. I mean, I've never had that sort of authority, but you learned. I know about stuff now in the hold, whether you want condensation going down a track, or you want rubber rollers, or you want metal rollers. Yeah. I'm an expert now, PDUs. But before, so it was, you were doing it on the hoof. It was brilliant. Probably the most exciting days of my career were my years in Etihad, because it was brand new airline that went woof, you know.
Yeah, and it was incredible, wasn't it? Incredible. It was just halcyon days. I mean, things that most other organisations, especially in our industry, they wouldn't have had an idea, you know, because it was just so fast, wasn't it? Aircraft were coming so quickly, new destinations. You're having to go out and do a review, you know, great opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, places around the world I'd never gone unless I was doing sort of the ground handling side. In the early days, I did all the ground handling contracts as well before we took on Peter Hewitt. And it was, you know, you got on an Emirates flight because they always went there before you did. You went and did a review of the handlers there, come back, and you were starting, I think, 2 new routes a month, which is phenomenal speed when you're going from zero, you know, no feet on the ground, no limited company, and then start a route in 2 months.
Yeah. I remember Etihad. I remember going to Baghdad with I can't remember the guy's name who was in. He was in safety or contracts.
Peter
God
Hewitt
bless-
was in contract.
No, not Peter. Who else was it? There was I can't remember his name now. God bless him. He died. He's dead. He died now. He died of a heart attack. He was a deep sea diver.
I don't know. Sorry. No.
Cracking fella. It was such a funny but exciting trip down there. It was incredible. Now, as far as like people that you've met on your career, there must have been mentors or people that, you know, pushed you in the right way or taught you how to turn a corner or.
No, mate, I'm the nuts. I do it all myself. No, of course there are. I think the first guy was my cargo manager at Cardiff Airport in Danair, a guy called Stuart Dodwell. He was my sort of first mentor. He was great because he taught you as well as leaving you to get on with it. And I learned a lot. Again, Danair, you had to do everything from driving forklifts in the warehouse to airbills manifests. We used to hand all the customs paperwork to the customs officers and take their stamp and stamp it yourself, because these guys, the main customs port of entry was the docks in Cardiff. So these guys were all sent up from the docks and knew nothing about air freight. All they knew is they needed something. So you'd grab the customs officer's stamp from his desk and say, stamp. I've got the manifest. You've let it go. Here's yours. Put it in your file. Thanks, mate. Bye. They haven't got a clue. It was brilliant. But Stuart was a mentor. Further down the line, I think the next one for me was a guy called Dick Lacey when I worked for BOC Cargo Services. He came from within BOC. He was put into us after we'd been bought, but he had worked for BA in his youth. Yeah. He was great because he sort of really held my hand in a big corporate world. I'd always worked for sort of smaller companies before. I mean, before that, I had Pat Roach, who was brilliant.
Oh, I know Pat, yeah.
Yeah, Pat was brilliant. He was the owner of the company, London Cargo Group. That's what was bought by BOC. Further down the line, well, I have to say, actually, I'd have to say, up to date, amazingly, my recent boss, a guy called Hendrik Leysens.
Yeah.
Hendrik's very clever young man.
He is, yeah, I remember him well.
My age. Yeah. He's half my age. He's learnt on the hoof, been a boss, you know, a VP level for 3 or 4 years, and I think he's doing a brilliant job. I'd work for him again tomorrow.
Oh, that's what a lovely recommendation, endorsement. I remember the first time I met him as well. He was the thing that comes across is he was very engaged, very enthusiastic, and very, very, very sharp, very quick.
Yeah. He was all round, you know. You have to play the politics. You have to know how to maneuver things to get it in the right audience and things like that. He's a past master at that already, you know. He looks after his staff. He keeps you informed. All the things you want from a good boss, and he does it all.
Plus, he had a good grounding, didn't he? Because he was, I think, when I first came across him, he was with IT and you know, measurement management and quality.
Well, he was the quality sort of in quality sort of department in Swissport Brussels. Yeah. And before that, again, he's got a good grounding. He was in Avia Partner as well. So I think it was Avia Partner he worked for. Check-in or something like that. Like me, I started on passenger check-in.
Oh, it's great, isn't it, when you get a different you know, insight into parts of the business, their interface, because you've got a better overview. Now, as far as you just mentioned there about corporate, somebody taking your hand through the corporate world. Yeah. Now, I mean, joking aside, you always used to say, like, you know, corporate world, you know, it's not for me, but you did well in it, Rupert. And I know you had a few ideas about what were the hurdles and the obstacles. Do you want to just elaborate on that now, as you've got free speech?
Hurdles and obstacles. Okay, we'll start with my bête noire, which is consultants. I think they're a complete waste of money. I think some of them might have a value at certain things when you need to supplement your business with some extra knowledge, but otherwise, no. And they're in Swissport at the moment, and I can't see their worth, and they're an irritant. But the corporate world is, I don't understand it now when sort of the presentation is more important than the content and all the buzzwords they use. I mean, why do you need a new word for something? Last year, it was called restructuring your company. This year, it's called transformation. Why?
Yeah.
What is the point? Does that make you more money because you sound more clever or something because you've invented something new? I call it, I have colleagues in America, and we used to play this game all the time. We call it bullshit bingo. And when anyone said some of this corporate crap, we just used to shout bingo down the phone. No one else knew what was going on, but we did. So when there's low-hanging fruit and I'm going to circle back and catch you and we'll park that one in the fridge for lunch later, what is all that about? Seriously, come on. And they all do it. The one I get to me now is, oh yes, after this call, I'm going to reach out to you. What do you mean you're going to reach out to me? I'm 500 miles away. You're going to phone me. So tell me you're going to phone me. Reach out. Complete BS. That's it. There you are. That's what I don't like about the corporate world. And the fact that you get to a certain level, it's all politics, and you're not doing the job anymore. I was happiest probably more at the coalface, learning. My Dan Air days, my Etihad days, you know? Anyway, you've got me blood going and I'm off now.
No. But it's good because a lot of it makes sense. Now, the thing that you said there about the presentation content being more than the practical impact, and the same thing with training and some of the activities. You know, at the end of the day, what's well, I shouldn't say what is, but what I think is necessary now is you get your people focused on the critical areas of the business, and don't get detoured with all the other stuff that sometimes takes too much and puts too much burden on the people who are down on the ground.
I mean, and that's what you see in corporate environments. When I worked for BOC, they were a big corporate, right? They took over a small handling company at Heathrow. Yeah, I was a general manager. We had about 4 cargo terminals at Heathrow, and all the corporate beast descended on you. So there was a huge department on health and safety, a huge one on I don't know, whatever, HR, and all these people have a single focus, but they're all focusing on one guy, and they all want something out of him now, and he's still running a business. So give him a break. You know, you can't quart out of a pint pot, but they all do it. I'm head office.
No, I think you're right. And to use and sorry, just in case you shout bingo now when I say something, but to use these independent verticals, they operate like silos. And you're right. If you're the one who's providing the operation, everybody else got their targets, their objectives, their milestones, their charters, their whatever it is, and they forget that on a Monday they might want something, but on a Friday afternoon, someone or the others said, I need something by Tuesday. And the priorities on the ground keep going up and up and up and up. And sometimes you have to take so many staff out or away from the core operation that they start to get frustrated. And I think one of the big problems is, Rupert, is when your employees start getting distracted by all the, the technical and the theoretical and the what we're going to have, that's a big problem.
I mean, I think that, it leads on to other things as well. I mean, one thing that I think that the standard of our industry has gone down the pan, and I think that started when the airlines stopped offering their internal training to external. So when Lufthansa stopped selling it and all the courses in Seeheim, when BA stopped doing it in Cranebank, I had all my basic training from BA. They were bill rating 1 and 2, everything. I did, the only person that trains now to a decent standard is IATA, because the airlines have stopped selling their. And I think now you've got kids in offices who don't know how to write an airway bill. They don't even know it's a contract. They don't fill it out properly.
No, you're right. I mean, I spent a long time with Lufthansa, and I'd always say the best training plus some of the best life experiences were at Seeheim. Anybody that ever visited or had the pleasure of getting a training course at Seeheim would know exactly what I mean.
Oh, I've heard. I never managed it myself, but I've heard. It did have another name, didn't it? But we won't say it here.
Oh, that was a unique place where everybody from around the world met, and some of the relationships and friendships and business opportunities were incredible as a result. And that is a shame to go. And I agree with you. I think the level of competency is not there like it used to be, because there's so many other pressures. and obviously to get a return on investment, which also beggars belief. Why is this? And you mentioned IATA. Of course, IATA are good at what they do and very professional. But if you look at all the training courses and you take one out and you just think to yourself, right, if I've attended that course and I really thought it was a good one, how much of the content did I remember after 3 months? How much did I keep for reference after 6 months? And how much would I transport into next year's, activities after 9 months? It's probably less than 5%, Rupert.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you lose so much. So then you would question, like, why do we not now start to consolidate more training just so that we focus on the real critical areas, but extend the competency levels for 90 to 120 days or something so that we check on it? And then you've got more of a blended, and you're not taking people out of the workplace for so long.
I think again, we don't, think that way. It's sad. I think you're right. And I think it's sad. Like you go, the ongoing sort of discussions with IATA about some of their validation programs, right? And discussions with industry people saying, well, I know what, that's, you don't have to do an audit now, because once you're on the IATA database, you're recognized as being acceptable, So like the old days of, then you get an airline, so let's call it a grade A airline, saying, well, actually the on the database, it says airline grade C has been there. I don't trust them, so I'm going to audit. And then you get there, well, why are you auditing? Because my regulator says I have to do a full audit. So, it's so disjointed. It's so, some of our big cargo stations, our quality manager is wrapped up in audits every day of the week. Yeah. You get an airline doing a operations audit, health and safety audit, compliance audit. Then there's the regulators come and audit. And if you've got 20 customers in a big terminal, you're permanently doing audits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it is tick box.
Yeah.
Are you actually improving anything by an audit? It's half of it. I don't think you are.
Let me ask you something then. With all the audits that you've received over the years from airlines, you must have seen a huge span of capability, competence, interest, and value from those particular airlines. How many of them would you say have done it better than you would yourself on an internal assessment?
The danger of doing self-audits is you're so familiar with your own setup, you just start ticking boxes and you believe you're doing it right. You're not actually challenging yourself, because you'd be saying that you're wrong. Which is difficult to do. So I think an audit of an airline has value, but I think it has to be, we've had the conversations about don't do the full audit. Last time they were good at that and they're good at that, but they were shit at that. So why don't you just focus on that? Save time. It's just the time taken. We've had in the ICHC, we had conversations about taking audit out because it's wasting time and how could we do it? But when you've got regulators say, I need the full thing, there's a huge disconnect. Our industry is lots of little self-interest groups all thinking they're working together to the ultimate aim. If I was a shipper and I really understood how air freight works, I'd put my freight on a boat.
Okay, that's all right. Well, yeah, that's a great advert.
No, this is not because I don't like air freight. It's a frustration. I've done it for 40 years. Some of the agendas I started going to meetings on 10, 15 years ago, I could just change the date and we're still talking about some of this stuff. Yeah, we're in the fastest moving mode of transport in the world and we're still talking about stuff 10 years later. But it can be done. It's interesting. I used to have the conversation with IATA, and I understand IATA. You have a representative body, which the airlines pay into, and they set the standards. And people from within the industry come together in working groups like we do for free and set the standards. Yeah. So you've got airlines on these working groups, handlers on the working groups, freight forwarders coming in now under IATA and all that lot. And they set the standards and we go, great, we've got it. Right, off we go. And then all the airlines go back to their head office and ignore it all. Why? Yeah. Would you put that in? I never forget one of our ICHCs. I won't name the airline because it was a big international airline. And they were all complaining that we weren't compliant in some IT system. It was it was one of the latest fads. We do fads in air cargo, don't we?
Yeah.
ISO, God, I'm not going to work with you until you've got ISO. Oh, but I'm 10 cents a kilo cheaper. Okay, I'll work with you, but don't tell everyone else. I mean, that's how it goes. So we said, well, we're ready. So, Mr. Airline, the 5 big handlers around this table, we're all ready. We can do this. Systems are ready. So we'll turn it on for you tomorrow. A certain Mr. Ambridge said. And this one airline man went absolutely white as a sheet. I can't do that. I've got to speak to my commercial people and we've got to get our system. But you've just been moaning that we can't do it for you. We're telling you we can do it now.
Yeah.
He went white as a sheet. No, you can't do that. So why are you pushing us? The thing that gets me about the airlines, well, our whole industry is, why would, we've had this conversation. I think there's a big word over our industry and it's called fear. We're always frightened of what someone else is going to do. So we do the wrong thing because we're frightened of losing out. So there's a huge drive to the bottom in terms of charging. Yeah. So your airline with a handler, the air freight rate to the freight forwarder, we're all screwing each other. So it's a ride to the bottom. Then they complain that the standards aren't good and you haven't trained your staff. Well, I've got them on minimum wage because I'm not making a return otherwise. Some of my colleagues in America run 2 jobs just to stay alive, you know? And so how does an airline think it's going to get gold service from a bronze price? And all this specialist service. I mean, I don't think there's, I always used to say that airlines see ground handlers as a necessary expensive evil. But if you think about it, the only differentiation of an airline's product happens on the ground. Doesn't matter what color it's painted. They all fly at 35,000 feet at 600 miles an hour. Doesn't matter. Yeah. And the freight doesn't do anything in the hold. So it's all on the ground. So then they have all these product differentiators, which in the end of the day, you're all doing the same thing, basically. But all you've done is confuse the guy on the front desk. It's airline A today with an F in the month, we've got to do this. It's airline B tomorrow with this in the month, we do it slightly differently. I was at a conference in Sorrento years ago and a ground handler in Ghana stood up and said, how come there is 30 ways to chock an A330? Because I've got 30 airline manuals and they all do it differently. Lunacy, ridiculous. You're confusing people and creating potential for error. We all talk about standardization and Starbuckification or whatever they call it nowadays, but we're still laboring towards it.
Bingo.
And I think, we still, the frustration is we've got a long way to go. I mean, there is basically only one way to handle a piece of freight from acceptance onto a plane, right?
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world, whether you're in Pakistan or London or New York, basically one way. So why have we got so many variations?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rupert, and you're right. We had so many discussions either as part of COAG and then ICHC, but also offline, and that fear with the acronym for everything, anything rules. So as soon as fear, you'll do everything and anything, and you make up your own rules again, and that's what's the biggest problem. And I agree with you. You know, it's such a shame. Now going back, we should probably do a nice segue here with Brendan Sullivan. With Brendan Sullivan, because obviously he's now taken over as head of IATA. So when we started supporting COAG way back, it was Des, then it went to Glyn, and now the baton has been handed over to Brendan. And I think you'd agree as well. Both Brendan and Andre, 2 sharp young lads, really good guys, and they've learnt their trade, and they've also listened to old buggers like us, giving them a hard time. But I think Brendan's going to do a great job.
I think he's got to change the mindset of IATA, which goes back to its core business of setting standards and making their members actually do it rather than emphasize selling manuals.
But I think as well, Rupert, with Nick Careen and also with Willie Walsh, I mean, you would think, you know, that's a pretty good lineup, you know, to start making those changes. And when we go back to COAG, you know, Des invited a few of us to set that up, which was looking at the combination of airlines and ground handling agents, and that's how it was set up. But there's a question I want to put to you now. I think the game changers now moving forward are going to be airports and GHAs. If they get that right together and consider the airport as a small ecosystem that needs to market itself against others, and attract airlines because of the services, the infrastructure, the support. I think that's where things will change.
Again, airlines have to value freight. I mean, you remember the years of Heathrow trying to throw freighters out.
Yeah.
You look at the buildings at Heathrow. We've just refurbed the old Heathrow cargo handling, but it's a refurb on a building that was built in 1960s.
Yep.
So now we're into the e-commerce world, Amazon Prime, couriers, lots more. I mean, air freight is sort of basically saving the industry at the moment in COVID days. And we're working out of buildings that the airport just milks with on-airport rents, are not fit for purpose anymore. They've not got the capacity or the structures. I mean, with few exceptions, the only good new terminals are built by handlers and normally off the airport. Donata's investments, Swissport's investments. We did Ghana. Where else have we done? We've Frankfurt. That's in line with the airport authority. But, I just get the feeling that you've got all these products. So you've got a warehouse and you want pharmaceutical handling and you want dangerous goods handling and you need a human remains handling and then you need a live animal station. And then you go, okay, then I'll put all that infrastructure in this tiny little thing that's falling down that the airport hasn't reinvested in for 40 years. And I go, where do I put my general cargo?
Yep. Which is why, Rupert, I think airports need to take a role in future proofing any facilities that are built on their airports as a prerequisite to whoever it is who's building it before it comes in and is managed or owned by.
Right. Look at the fixes. If you look at Cargo City Sud in Frankfurt, that's basically an on-airport, what we used to call an old trading estate, that they turned into air cargo handling facility. What a load of rubbish, not fit for purpose from day one. On the online ones like Lufthansa and LUG, fine. But this lot, what a lot, and I think,
Go on, son. Go on.
It drives me mad because something could have been done about it. I'm not angry. I'm sort of passionate and frustrated in a way, because I'm just leaving now because it is almost like Groundhog Day. Nothing changes. Everyone's making their own little money in their own little silo. The only reason that aviation's air cargo changes, in my personal experience, is because a regulator tells you to, or the customer demand is so great. And still we don't learn. In the 1970s, the integrators came in, took a load of general cargo air freight away. They even bought the biggest bloody air freight cargo airline in the world, Flying Tigers, and stole half the freight. And what do? We still do the same thing. And now you've got Amazon Prime doing the same thing another 30 years later. And we're still sitting there doing the same old rubbish where we're doing it the same way, hoping you get a different result. Isn't that the first sign of madness? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result?
But isn't it a shame, Rupert, that, and you mentioned there about the catalyst of change, the regulator, that gives the industry no choice. And we've been in places. I mean, we were even at a World Cargo Symposium when something happened, and bang, you've got certain directives, you've got no choice. And then if it's customer demand, that's normally too late, and the customers are already thinking of doing something else. So, there needs to be a real positive disruptor approach to the way we do the business, and to make sure that those that are in it are part of a supply chain that's a complete solution, not segmented within the solution, so that we're able to compete then with.
I thought our prime time for disruption and standing back and look at ourselves is post-COVID, right? It was all thrown in the air. We can sit back and ask ourselves serious questions. First one is, are we actually doing what the customer wants, right? At the end of the day, I would hazard a guess that a shipper, all he wants is he's got a customer, he's promised him X amount of goods every Tuesday for the next 6 months. Just make sure it gets there, not broken, not missing, not late. That's it. That's all they want. So why are we fluffing it up? Why are we trying to ram high technology into not fit for purpose cargo terminals? And why do we do all that fancy stuff and don't focus on the basics? It's still difficult to get a consistency of service. You can get a good quality for a week, then it all goes tits up. And you go, why? So just give them the basics. Have you ever asked them what they really want? Do they want this fancy pre-alert message that goes to their mobile phone every 20 minutes about it going to the warehouse? If I was a shipper, I couldn't give a monkeys. I just want to make sure it gets there when I promise my customer. So make your supply chain work that way. Make it happen. Don't tell me unless it goes wrong, and tell me if it's gone wrong, what you're going to do about it to get it back on track. Yeah?
Yep. No, that's clear.
Don't do that. Just get it right. I had a conversation in the early days when everyone thought there's going to be tons of money in pharmaceuticals. You know, when the EU GDP changed in 2013 and the old air freight industry got on the next bandwagon, which was, pharmaceuticals, off we go. And I was speaking to a big pharmaceutical company, their global transport manager. And I was going, what sort of infrastructure do you want? And he showed me a slide. And this is highly expensive drugs for human consumption in their supply chain. And his message to me was, just get it right every time. I'm really not fussed about fancy infrastructure. Get it right every time. And he said, yeah, look, here's the last mile on one of my drug distributions, yeah? And I never forget this picture. We've all been told this is expensive. This is, you've got to look after it. It's got to go in the fridge. He said, it's all great having all that sexy stuff in Europe, but you don't get it in Pakistan or Ethiopia. And we don't not send drugs there. So why are you all fussing around Europe? It is his last mile was a man on a camel with a cool box for a picnic with the drugs in, with a bit of ice and an umbrella over the top. That was last mile delivery. And he said that worked every day of the week. I was happy. And yet in Europe, we fuss about chillers and this and that. And
let me ask you. So now, like, once I did a presentation where I had GDP and CEIV as Muhammad Ali and Joe Fraser, and, you know, two great champs. And on any day, one would be as good as the other. And it was about, you know, which one makes more sense and why. Now, you're familiar with both. All right. So what's your opinion? Because my opinion is that our industry facilitates the speed and the transparency and the quality of that journey. So provided the manufacturer's got it packed accordingly, there shouldn't be a problem as long as we get through it quickly. Now, when I see things like we need to re-ice or we need to do, I'm thinking, why? It should already be gone. So
again, it's, yeah, I mean, the first thing I think, and I'm validated with this, everyone says IATA CEIV and GDP are different. Well, they're not. IATA CEIV is translating EU GDP into the
our speech
of the business.
Yeah.
So first of all, that still goes around. You need to be GDP or IATA certified. It's the same bloody thing. So we've got people in the industry don't even know what they're talking about asking for stuff. I've forgotten the question now. I'm getting so heated. I'm going to have to lie down.
No, this is lovely, mate. This is lovely. No, it was just about, you know, when you think about it, I mean, what we should be focusing on as a community is factory to factory and how we facilitate that with our partners, whether it's a trucking company, whether it's a forwarder, whether it's a handling agent. We need to be all as one for that particular piece of business. Okay. So, and it can be with repeated partners.
There's nice little, I mean, partnership, that's a great word. I love the word partnership. That was buzzed around 10, 20 years ago. We need to have solid partnerships. A partnership is only good while everything's going right. When it goes wrong, I'm the service provider, you're the payer, my ass gets kicked. Don't give me partnership bullshit, absolute crap. Until we grow up and we get to real partnerships, that's what it is. When the poo hits the fan, it all unravels. In my experience.
Which then brings it back to blame and fear, which then brings it back to penalties and brings it back to like contracts, black marks on tenders, etc.
You know, we've had a long debate over a document from one of our customers gone on for months because it was a quality agreement as an addendum to the contract. And they said, well, just sign it, you know, but it's a legally binding part of the contract you want. So we've got to get it right. We've got to understand. And we're still talking. I mean, go back to sort of like, why can't we move fast? You talk about IATA and we do all these documents and it takes about 1.5 years to get a standard out of IATA in the fastest moving industry in the world. So by the time we moved on, and yes, I fully understand the argument that if you're going to be a standard setter, you've got to go through some decent sense checks to make sure you don't put out anything that's wrong.
Yep.
But the regulators and then behind them, IATA came out in 10 days of being able to put freight in the cabin. because there was a need.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And
So,
ICAO support and the guidelines, fantastic.
all came out in 10 days. Yeah, but now we're going back. I just don't think the original conversation was we've got a perfect ability to have a disruption to this industry and do it differently. And I think we're just slipping back into the old ways again. I think we're having a missed opportunity.
Yeah. No, I agree. We must not miss this now because, you know, people are talking about bring back better and, you know, it's all about, it is about that now. We've got an opportunity to redefine and get rid of a legacy of waste and a legacy of complexity and do things differently. But everybody's really got to be up for it and make it simple and sustainable. And to do that, again, you know, it's factory to factory. And, you know, something Stan Wraith said to me just the other week. He said, Chris, he said, all we got to do, he said, is focus on speed, transparency and quality. Yeah. And only then, if you can tick all three of them, should you be talking about price. And when it comes to price, you've got two basic products. You've got value products and volume products, and those should be priced accordingly, and people should accept it. But one of the things that's a trouble with our industry, Rupert, as we both know, is as soon as you've got to pay more for a product, people don't want to declare it. People don't mark it up correctly. And then when something goes wrong, again, it comes back to the blame and why did this happen? So, you know, that sort of area, that just needs to be clarified. And at the end of the day, pay for it accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I got this from another inspirational person for me was a guy called Paul Rodwell. I think he was ahead of the time, but he was quite a shy guy. So I think many people didn't listen to him a lot. He now works for On Asset or something. Very clever guy. Yeah. And he said years ago, we're a commodity business, offer them a gold, silver, bronze. Yeah. Don't accept the bronze price and try and offer them the gold service. Gold, silver, bronze, right? So if you want your cargo done for the bronze price, it goes through the cargo terminal, it goes on the book flight, you get a departure message, that's it. If you want special cargo messages and shit, you're up into silver. Yeah. If you want all the whistles and everything, and we can give you a track and trace on your website and push messages to you about where it is and when it is and everything, that's gold, but you pay for it.
No, I agree with you. And years ago, I was working with Lufthansa, and I was responsible for rolling out the TD products. You know, the time definite.
I like the TDs, flash, and all that. Yeah.
So we did all that, and then we had to do a road show all around America, and afterwards we had a little awards and celebration with all the guys that were involved and all the people from the road crew and everything. It was great. And then I said to my boss at the time, who was Michael Forver, I said, "Do you mind if I do the same presentation, but from the stance that I had a dream last night that I had to tell the truth?" And he said, "Yeah, go on." So I did exactly the same presentation that we did to everybody, but I just did it with that little twist. And I joked on the side by saying that what we should actually be saying is that it's TD today or tomorrow, TD soon, and TD when we can. And but joking aside, if you split some of the transparency on some of the products that could be there, because at the end of the day, now more than ever, it's an absolute sin to allow any cubic meter or any unit or pallet or container to go out empty because of the capacity restrictions. So it's a sin. But you could actually say, right, look, this is our primary product, bang, nice and clear. This is our support product, and this is our capacity available product. And you could open it up nice and simple and close everything up. And obviously the critical products are all the high value.
I mean, going back, we're saying consistent quality. I have to go back to Lufthansa. I was a young cargo manager at a cargo terminal at Birmingham Airport. The company was called Elmden Cargo Handling. It was part of the London Cargo Group. So Pat Roach was the CEO, and we handled Lufthansa. And they had their own team up there, nice bunch of people. Then they cut back on the team and they introduced penalty and reward. Remember the old penalty and reward?
I remember it, yeah.
Right, okay.
Bonus malus. Yeah.
I think it was called, they called it penalty and reward, didn't they? But it was a bonus malus, right?
Yeah.
And it was mapped out, and we had a lady called Faye. She was scary.
Yes, Faye in Birmingham.
Yeah. She then, because Lufthansa shut their office, the deal was we took her on board and she just managed the Lufthansa product. Everyone was frightened to death of Faye, but she was good and she was honest and she told it as it was, but she was fair. We accepted the penalty and reward, but the first instinct was no. So you're almost saying to yourself, we're not good enough, we can't do it. Why are you in the business if you can't? And we did it. And what happened was, we were only a small cargo terminal and there were only a couple of flights a day. But what happened was we got it right on Lufthansa. Yeah. And then that just percolated to all our other customers naturally. Our quality went up no end because there was a fair product that they were prepared to pay for with a measurement, and you knew where you stood. And I loved that. I absolutely loved it.
It was good. And so much that Lufthansa did was good. And then when you introduce something, there's always people who are clever with how they manage something like that. And some parties, what they started to do, Rupert, was they started to realize that if you focused on your bonus elements and you got those really right, you were assured of that extra benefit financially. And then if you were a little bit slipped up on your penalties, as long as the penalties weren't as much as your bonus, then they let it go.
The other thing, the Lufthansa, I mean, other people, just I want to have a penalty and reward, and you'd see some of these, and the sort of like the penalty or the reward for the service. You go, you're just thinking money. With Lufthansa, it was if you made a dangerous goods error, which was a safety issue for the aircraft and the people on it, that cost you 500 quid. Yeah. If it was the airway bill didn't have a message sent, it was 25p. So the focus was in the important areas. You knew exactly where you stood.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to highlight some of these bigger issues because people are too good at doing a standard response letter. And the standard response is we've identified the parties responsible, and in some cases we've disciplined, and in others we've dismissed them from their service. Well, that's not the right culture, and that's not the way it should be done.
That when I first started Swissport, that was the answer to any customer complaint. Yeah, we've investigated, we found the staff member, and we've sacked him. Nothing about retraining everyone else, actually itemizing why that guy made a mistake in the first place, what pressures were on him at the time, blah, blah, blah. None of that. It's just, and the airlines accepted it. So they're just as much to blame.
Yeah, no, I agree. Which is why SMS, proper just cultures, human factor awareness, it's those are things that have really improved over the time. Now, I just want to go just very quickly now, what were your fondest memories looking back, just very quickly, anything that comes to mind?
Well,
and you don't have to say working with me, Rupert. We can leave that as a.
That goes without saying, Chris.
That goes without saying, mate. Yeah.
I remember sitting down outside the warehouse when I'd resigned, having a chat with you, and I think I was very hyper, and you were calming me down, and I smoked about 8 cigarettes in about 10 minutes. I remember that. God knows what the conversation was about, but I remember that. No, my days, I think in hindsight, my Dan Air days were good because that was just a fantastic learning ground. Yeah, you learned so much. And then my Etihad in the early days, I mean, I remember going into the office and the airline actually took over GAMCO, which was the big engineering company, training center. That was our head office, and it was one room. So in one corner was flight operations, in the other corner was holidays, in another corner was check-in, and in one corner was cargo. And I went and
I remember that was the big black square building, wasn't it?
It was in front of GAMCO. Then they extended it, and now they built all their own stuff. Yeah, but that, and again, my colleague, I said, where's cargo? And where are we going to put this part of cargo? And my colleague, Mohammed Sharif, picked up this chair and he said, here, bang, stuck it down. And we built it from there. That was great. It was so exciting. But building a new airline that you knew wasn't going to fail because it had petrodollars behind it. It was brilliant.
They were great days. Now, listen, when you left Etihad, I wrote a poem for you.
Oh, God.
I don't know if you remember.
God, yeah.
I don't know if you remember. And you said to me, I don't want anybody saying anything. I just want to go.
I don't like that type of stuff either. So no.
I know you don't. But I wrote a poem for you, and I'd like to read it out. But what I'd also like to say is, seriously, anybody that's worked with you or has had you as a supplier or as a customer will always remember you, Rupert, and remember you fondly. Seriously, you're a great character. The industry needs characters. I don't care what anybody says, because people need to look up to someone or to be with somebody and know that those characters are not afraid to speak up, whether it be for the right reasons or on behalf of people that otherwise wouldn't speak up. And you've definitely been one of them. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor working with you on the ICHC, especially in the latter times, because your knowledge is exceptional. And the one thing that I hope is that somebody might be out there listening now or whatever, and whenever you decide that you've played enough Scrabble, walked enough miles, knackered the dogs, drunk the local whiskies, whatever it is, that somebody somewhere should want to tap into that knowledge, because the younger generation and the future of the industry, there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of a window into that engine room of knowledge, so that it can speed their journey up through their career. And I think that's something that our industry needs to get right as well, because there almost seems to be a conflict when somebody new comes into a position and somebody is moving out, or somebody's got the experience. It's almost as if neither of them want to do something together, because one feels that the other is just telling them how good it was and it's a wannabe, and the other one is saying, well, I don't care because I've got my phone and I can check anything on here. I'll learn by my, whereas if it was able to come together, I think it would be a fantastic marriage.
I couldn't possibly be a consultant. I've been so disparaging about consultancies. I could never go and say I'm a consultant. I might have to
be a mentor.
I'm doing a dedicated job for someone. I know that's consultancy, but I couldn't admit to it. No, I don't have any plans at the moment, but I've always said that you can never say no. I don't know if I'm going to get bored senseless. I might. And I jokingly said, if someone gives me a task that I find very interesting and pays me obscene amounts of money, I might come back. But that's a joke, really.
No. But let's see. But I for one, I've just been given a gift by my granddaughter.
Oh yeah.
Have I got a drink? You can give me a drink as well. She's just come to say hello. She's just given me this little drink, and she's told me that we've got to now go for a walk. So
right, you've got to go. Right,
I've got to go. But listen, I really appreciate it, Rupert. Honestly, you've been an absolute star. Pleasure to work with, and you've been an asset to this industry, and you've left a legacy, I'm sure, that people will remember for a long, long time.
Thank you, Chris. Very kind words. Appreciated. Thank you. I've enjoyed today. I'm sure. I think if I hadn't resigned, I'd have been sacked after this. So it's
not at all, mate. Not at all. And I know that there's a more of a over 15, shall we say, or a PG version that we could have done as well.
Yeah. I was very controlled, I have to admit. Yeah.
Seriously, good luck, my friend. Take care of yourself.
Cheers.
And please keep in touch.
Yeah, all the best. I've got your number, of course. All the best. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, mate. Take
Cheers.
care.